Hi team. Today I wanted to go through this sketchbook that I've been filling up over the past month and a half. It's my gallery of gouache. Gouache is a medium that's kind of halfway between watercolor and acrylic. You get the wateriness, the blendability of watercolor, and you also get the opaqueness of acrylic if you just add a little bit more paint to your brush. I'd like to make it clear that I wasn't a complete beginner when I started this. This is my first gouache painting, but I've done a good handful of watercolor and acrylic pieces in the past. Here is my best watercolor, and here is my best acrylic study. I like doing portraits. But yeah, I've always felt like I'm sort of in flux with my painting ability. I'll practice for a couple weeks and then stop painting for a couple months and then lose a lot of my temporary gains. So with this project, I just wanted to have a sort of consistent practice and see how much I could grow my ability throughout 30-ish pages. And yeah, now I want to do a little walkthrough of each of the pieces. So, like I mentioned, this is my first one. I was using a 12 color set of gouache, whereas usually when I paint with acrylic, I only have the three primaries, yellow, blue, and red, and then black and white. Having more colors meant I could have more saturated tones, and it was easier to mix. It didn't take as long to make minor adjustments to get the color dialed in. I really liked how the bottom half of the composition looks. This shadow cast by another tree, and then all of these grass colors are very cool. This tree was the last thing I painted, and I was getting a little bored, so that's why it's not really up to snuff, but still happy with it overall. This next one, I think I was punching way above my weight. This turned out beautiful, at least for my second one, and I think a lot of that is happy little accidents. For instance, like, I think it's a really nice touch that this background color and this bookshelf color are so similar, and they kind of like bleed into each other. It's almost like a Cézanne painting, like blending line and color in a way. And I didn't really mean to do that. I was just playing around with the medium. And this magenta here is beautiful. This very like luminous background. Ugh. Ugh. The dream. This is the first of many spreads. It's a view out my window, and I really like the colors. I did it again a bit by accident, but purple and yellow are complementary colors. So having this vibrant yellow against this more muted purple is a really nice harmony, and having this slightly warmer tree take up the foreground brings both depth in like warmth in the foreground, coolness in the background, but also just in like detail. I mean, the background's less detailed, less sharp edges. So I think that this came together in a really nice way, but it wasn't really because I was like, oh, this is what I want to do for this piece. It just sort of happened. And a big goal for me moving forward was to be able to like have lightning strike twice, be able to replicate the magic, because now I have a much better understanding of like why this looks good. This is a view from my other window, and I don't think it's quite as good. The clouds were moving around a lot, and the whole condition of the sky was changing as I was painting it. So it would go from like really sunny to like really cloudy, like looked like it was gonna rain. And just that amount of movement meant that like once I had painted the darkness of the clouds and I was ready to move on to the next color, the whole sky had changed. And so I think I could have done it better, but a good challenge for sure. And then these like low resolution buildings in the background were just a matter of time. Like it takes a long time to like render out a whole bunch of small details. So just taking kind of like a glimpse of almost like an impression much of what the lower part looks like. This one was a still life that I didn't finish, so I won't spend too much time talking about it. But I think that this mug sculpture looks really cool. I like the sort of blue highlights and like gold highlights. I think it's super cool. This one actually folds out, and we got a self-portrait. This is me. I drew myself in front of a mirror. I really like how I left the pant leg and the wheel of the chair unfinished. This is just a sticker. I didn't paint that. I think my face could have gone a little bit better. The expression kind of looks a little bit awkward. But something else that I did accidentally that was cool is this pot is like, it looks like it's really far away. And I think that like forced perspective really gives this painting a lot of depth. And I love the background color. It looks like hazy and like almost dreamlike. And then this other end, it's okay, but I think it's a failed experiment. I spent so long on this mug trying to get into like the little details of light, and it just still looks kind of flat, and the coffee coming out of it is this weird like sickly color. The idea is that the coffee steam is kind of like melting into the view from out my window, which was these like beautiful foggy mountains. And I even like put kind of a sketch of the window in as well. But I don't think it really sells the idea. This was an exercise for a class where we're supposed to draw out little amorphous blobs, then kind of fill them in with what we thought that they looked like. So with this one, I figured it kind of looked like a bowling pin. This one was kind of like an egg, and this one is like a tree from like Chicka Chicka Boom Boom. This was a study for a larger painting that I've started sketching, but I haven't actually started painting it. The things I like about this one are that the sink has its own like distinct gray. It's kind of a more bluish gray, and then the cutlery, the dishes have a different gray. It's a little bit more red tinted. Yeah. I think that the seam on this one looks really awkward. It was kind of a continual problem with this sketchbook. Anytime I wanted to do a spread to make the cut down the middle not totally interfere with the composition. This one was especially hard just because this is the page where two different signatures meet, these two groups of paper. So there was really a whole lot of mess here, and I think that could have been done a little bit cleaner. This piece was a view from somewhere by the river. You can see a little bit of the river down at the bottom. I think that this one is a step forward for me in the color variety. I mean, there's greens, there's oranges, there's reds, browns, blues. Whereas this one is really just like 2 or 3 main colors. So this one took a bit more intentionality, and the elements are kind of hard to place. Like originally I was going to have this graffiti wall be the bulk of the composition, like have it be way zoomed in. I don't know why I didn't do that. I think I just started on the foreground and then didn't have space to do that. But the way that I actually ended up arranging the elements is pretty not accurate to how it was in real life. Like this bridge should be way further to the left, and the trees are all in different spots, but you wouldn't really know it just by looking at this. I think the one awkward thing is that this water just kind of goes to nowhere, but I still think that this was kind of cool in some ways. And if you look at individual parts of it, I think that it's cooler than it is as like a full piece. Whoa, who's this guy? So this is like a bear statue that I have that I used to hang jewelry, and I painted it because there was light coming from behind it through my window, and I thought that was like beautiful. This one is, I think, a good example of a spread where like the line through the middle doesn't really impact the composition because there's already 2 distinct halves with their own palettes. I really like the way that the leaves of this snake plant look. The one thing I don't like is that I made this vibrant orange region before I colored any of this other background orange. And so now it just doesn't really make sense. Like there should be more leaves visible back here, or there should be like the body of the bear visible. But other than that, I think this turned out really, really nice. Here we've got a study of a river. What I did for this one is the base layer is a whole bunch of colors like straight out of the tube. So like as vibrant as they could be, because I thought I'd go ahead and paint over top of that. But I think using such a rainbow of colors made it look a little bit messy and honestly like muddy. Like I don't really like the way that looks. I think if I just picked like 2 or 3 colors to have at full saturation, I wouldn't have had the same issue, and I could have just blended it a lot more seamlessly, had a more clear vision for the color. But this whole thing is just for experimentation. So with any of these like self critiques, I'm not like, damn it, like I really fucked up. It's more just like that's something I'll keep in mind next time. And if I hadn't done this experiment, I wouldn't have known that that was something I wanted to avoid. You know. With this one, it's a sketch of a coffee shop that I went to. What I really like is the perspective on these bricks. I think it's super cool. And the colors on the table. Very vibrant, very beautiful. I think that there's not a great contrast of value. I think that the bricks should have gotten much darker and not just less saturated as you go down. These two were very interesting. I drove up to a national forest, and just at a trailhead, I parked my car because it was snowing, and I just painted out my window. So there was a whole bunch of snow and rain on my window, and it kind of reads like that. Like I kind of tried to make it look like you were looking through like a watery surface. I think that even with that effect, I still could have had more value contrast. Like when I put in the darkest darks, I realized that like, wow, it's not very dark. Like it kind of takes a second for your eye to get used to the way this looks. But I do think this is a step forward in arranging the scene so that it works as a spread, because this is like a spread. But the fact that it's like very like watery in concept means that like I really like how it's like a vignette with like these drippings down here. This piece has another nasty seam. It's another one of these signature breaks. And this was under a bridge, so there was a lot of like sharp changes in color between areas that were illuminated by the sun and areas that were like covered by the bridge. And I didn't really communicate that. Like I think it was really hard to. I don't have a super advanced understanding of light. And as these rocks are going from light to dark, it kind of sells it. It kind of works, but I don't know. This one turned out really good. I tried to keep a continuity of colors throughout the 2 panels of the scene. So the same colors that are in the tree, you can find in this wagon and in this house, which saved me a lot of time in blending. Like I didn't have to mix a whole bunch of new colors. I could go over it in layers. Like this is my gray layer and this is my brown layer, and get the whole thing done a lot faster. I really like also the way that the grass looks. These were 2 studies from a bridge that goes over the railway by my house. So I was able to look down at the train cars, which I thought was super cool. This one I did from life, and then this one was from a photo reference. This is more like a practice piece. This is not really like a final work. I mean, none of these are. But this one is a little bit more polished. I was looking through this fence, and so I tried to make the fence look a little bit like blurry. And this is really the first and probably best example of having my brush be a little bit more watery when I'm painting like the background, sky blue. And then as we get closer, as we get into like the train cars, it gets to be more acrylic and opaque. That difference in texture is a good way to communicate depth. And with the fence, because I'm looking like past it and it's kind of blurry, the middle bits are the most opaque, and then it gets a little bit more translucent on the edges, which I think is cool. With this one, I kind of had an idea in mind when I started sketching it out. I was thinking of a painting by Georgia O'Keeffe of this church tower. It's such a strong, bold, like symmetric composition that really just like hits you, and it almost makes me want to be religious. Though I don't think that's ever going to happen. So I wanted to achieve the same thing with this like water tower thing. I wanted it to be like the most imposing kind of like tall element, but then this chokecherry tree, I wanted it to kind of like steal its thunder, like be even more prominent of a figure. And I think that it was a good idea. I think that the choke cherry tree kind of makes the composition worse. I think that I should have made the water tower shorter so that there was more space for the choke cherry tree to breathe. It looked a little bit better without it. And then this one was from a photo reference. I got to this intersection while driving and I was just like, wow, like this is beautiful. Like the trees kind of come down in the same way that the mountains do. And the street light is just there in the middle and it's like, oh. I think I did this one really faithfully and I like the technique I used for down here. I can only make my brush strokes so thin, so it was good to paint little bits of sky color over top of it to make it look more, I don't know, sparse. This one I didn't include in the short that I posted about the last bit of this sketchbook, just because it's political and there's nothing wrong with, like, I'm not trying to hide my political beliefs, but I think that this one is not very approachable. It says, President Trump's approval falls among vital crony base after fascists lose re-election in Hungary. One billionaire asks why US couldn't have meddled a little more. I think that the message is something that I agree with, and I think it could hit to someone who kind of is like informed. But I think to anyone else, it's kind of just, I mean, it's kind of critiquing Trump for something that he didn't do. So I just decided not to post it because I think posting bad art is one thing, but posting bad like political satire is a little bit worse. I do like the look of it. It's very much on the watercolor side, and that was a real challenge, but I like the way that the incense smoke kind of snakes around the whole piece. These both came from photo references. This one I painted out the background and I really, really like the way it looks. Like this is probably my favorite one in the whole sketchbook. This one I was kind of rushing on. I think the shading looks a little bit desaturated, especially compared to like this very vibrant background color. But I think the addition of these like leaves from the photo is cool. And then we got one more. Ta-da! I returned to the site of these to give it a second look. I picked a different spot and it was obviously not snowing out. I think this is very cool, and this kind of highlights what gouache is like good for. Like something that has both like bold lines and fainter dabs of paint. The Bowser is not gouache, this is just marker. But yeah, that's pretty much the long and short of it. Really happy with this experiment, and I want to know what you guys think, so let me know in the comments. I think that using this sketchbook became a little bit of a limitation because the pages are so small. So even if I'm doing a spread, I always have to work around this middle line, and I'm focusing really hard on my technique, like making my brush strokes like nice and clear, which is good to focus on. But it would be nice if I had just like a larger canvas to be able to paint a bit looser and freer. So while I think this set me up well, I'm excited to start working on bigger canvases. Maybe you could start your own gallery of whatever. Could be gouache, could be like collage, I don't know. See ya.